Hello students, this is our note-taking on photosynthesis 8.2. This is called Photosynthesis Overview. In order to do these notes successfully, you're going to need 4 or 5 colored pencils. We're going to need these colors: blue, red, green, black, and yellow. If you can't find a yellow, it's no big deal. If you want to use pencil instead of black, that's fine, but we definitely want to have the blue, the red, and the yellow. So if you don't have those colored pencils in hand, pause the video here, go dig those up, and then when you're ready, come back, unpause, and we'll do the note taking. It is important that we take these notes in color. Your brain loves images, so it's going to be as much a graphic organizer as it is note taking, and your brain also loves color. So we're going to get the basics of photosynthesis in 2 forms, and we're going to do it in color. All right, so you're going to want to have a blank piece of paper. It doesn't have to be computer paper like this. It can be lined paper, but we want to turn it landscape style. We're going to turn it landscape style, and then we're going to write on one side and then the other, nice and big. Again, I always like to say there's no points for conservation of space when it comes to note taking, because you can always annotate and add things later. Let's get right to it. We're going to title this the Photosynthesis Overview. The way this will work is I'll write a little bit, I'll show you, you can pause it, you can write down what I have following the same color pattern, and then unpause it and we go from there. All right, so again, we're going to call this Photosynthesis Overview, but the photo word we're going to write in blue. The synthesis part we're going to write in red, and the overview part we're going to write in black. And then go ahead and underline that. So we'll start like this: Photosynthesis Overview. And the color coding will make sense when we get there. So photo in blue, synthesis in red, overview in black. All right, so we're going to start with the overall equation. So I'm going to write out the phrase overall equation like that, and then I'm going to write the equation down, but I'm going to write it color coded. So again, it's going to be a lot of putting pencils down and picking pencils up. We're going to start with 6H2O, and I'm going to write that in blue. So 6H2O in blue, plus 6CO2, and that's in red. So 6 CO2 in red. So 6 water molecules plus 6 carbon dioxides. And then I'm going to take my black and I'm going to draw an arrow. And then I'm going to write 6O2. I'll show you this in just a second. Plus C6H12O6. Okay, so there is my overall equation. 6 waters plus 6 carbon dioxides yields 6 oxygens and sugar. Now you've known since you were a kid that plants need water, air, they give off oxygen, and they make food in the form of sugar. Well, now we're just getting down to the specifics of it. I would also like you, if you have a yellow handy, I want you to add, it's going to be really hard to see because mine's in yellow, but it states there, right there, I'm going to do this backwards, right there it states sunlight or sun. So that says sunlight or sun. If you don't have a yellow, just write sun. But what I do want you to write underneath that arrow is the phrase chloroplasts. All right, so that states chloroplasts. 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 I had to write it kind of faint because my colored pencil is on the verge of breaking. All right. So that just tells us the location, right? The location specifically in plant cells where this happens, in the chloroplast, that energy converting organelle. All right, so now let's go to what we call the light dependence. Stay with me here. This actually goes pretty quick. Part 1, light dependent. I'm just going to label it light dependent, and I'm going to write that in black. So now you're going to need your black or your pencil and your blue. Your black and your pencil and your blue. So again, we're going to start with, I'm going to take the blue and I'm going to write 6H2O. Now, photosynthesis has these low energy intermediates, so we're going to put those in there. So 6 waters plus, this is now going to be in black or your pencil, ADP and NADP plus. So now we have 6 waters plus our 2 low energy intermediates, which you learned about on Friday, adenosine diphosphate and NADP plus. Now this plus all the way over here, that's not a T, that's a superscript. That means that it's lost an electron and it's got a positive charge. So ADP and NADP plus, those are low energy intermediates. Again, now we're going to draw a little arrow. And then we're going to write in the word sunlight, or draw a little bolt of light. And then we're going to pick up our blue and we're going to write 6O2. So now 6 waters plus our low energy intermediates in the presence of sun. Whoa, here's the sunlight. Here's the sunlight. And then the oxygen. And then the oxygen. Now we're going to pick our black and we're going to go ATP and NADPH. So ATP and NADPH. So this is part 1, or the light dependent equation, right? So 6 waters plus these low energy intermediates, ADP and NADP plus the sunlight gives us oxygen, and then high energy intermediates, ATP and NADPH. Now we're just going to add one more thing. We're going to take our green and underneath the arrow, write the word thylakoid membrane. In the same way that we wrote the word chloroplasts underneath the arrow before. Now this is just making a distinction. So again, that states thylakoid, THYLAKOID membrane. That's a part of the chloroplast. That's just where the light dependent reaction takes place. So that's the first part. Really, photosynthesis is really 2 parts. It's a 2-part equation. The first part is capturing the energy, and the second part is converting the energy into sugar, trapping the energy in sugar molecules. Really, in the end, photosynthesis is an energy conversion process. It is converting light energy in the form of light, into chemical energy trapped in chemical bonds. There's lots of different forms of energy. There's mechanical energy, thermal energy, energy of heat. There's the energy of light, and then there's chemical energy trapped in chemical bonds. And that's really what a calorie is, right? When we talk about a food being high in calories or low in calories, it's just a certain amount of energy that is trapped in the chemical bonds. So I really want you to think of photosynthesis as an energy converting process. Right? We're going to take energy in the form of light, and we're going to trap that energy in chemical bonds in the form of glucose. It's a 2-part equation. The first part is to capture the sunlight energy, and the second part is to harness that captured energy and convert it into a different form of chemical energy. Right, so in our first equation, right, we have gone from over here, we went from the water and the ingredients, the low energy intermediates, and then what we've done is we've grabbed this sunlight, we've taken the energy from this sun, and we've trapped it in these chemicals over here. So now we've trapped this energy in these chemicals over here. These two right here were low energy, ADP and NADP plus. We add a phosphate to this group, making it ATP, and we add a hydrogen to this, making it NADPH. So now these two intermediates over here have more energy than these two right here. So now the first part is to capture the energy from sunlight into chemical form. Now in part 2, we're going to take that chemical form in form 1 and cache it into energy chemical form 2. So let's pick up our black pencil. Again, just label it part 2. I'm going to call this the light independent part. So there's the light independent part, right? Now we're going to take our red. Go back to your red. And then here we have our, sorry, I tell a lie. Back to the black. My apologies. Stay with the black. We're going to write ATP plus NADPH plus, now we'll pick up the CO2, and I'll show you this in just a second, right, 6CO2. Right. Now I want it to look like this. Right. So again, the first part, we start with water and low energy intermediates. We take the sunlight and we take the energy from the sunlight and we trap it in these low energy intermediates by adding a chemical bond to each of them. We add a phosphorus to make this ATP, adenosine triphosphate, and we add a hydrogen to make this NADPH, so it has more chemical bonds. Right, now we're going to take these high energy intermediates plus the carbon dioxide, and now we're going to build the glucose. Right, so now we're going to take our, draw the arrow again, and then it's ADP and NADP plus C6H12O6. All right, so now I have this. All right, so now I've taken these high energy intermediates, and I'm going to use the energy in these extra bonds, the extra bond of the phosphate here, and the extra bond of the hydrogen here, and I'm going to take my carbons and my oxygens, and then I'm going to take some of the extra hydrogens from the water way over here, and then I'm going to make these, and I'm going to use this energy. So I'm going to use this energy here to convert these two back to this, and then that energy from these chemical bonds is used to make this. I know that can be kind of confusing. It's a little backwards. I mean, I have to think backwards. But, right, so we start with our water, right, and our low energy intermediates. We take the sunlight and we capture this sunlight, this energy, in these low energy intermediates by adding a phosphate and a hydrogen, and a waste product is oxygen. So that oxygen is a waste product. So you can see that's the blue part. That's the photo part. Right, so you notice up here it says photo in blue. Well, the light part, photo means light. So this is the part that requires the light. So that's the blue. The red part up here is the synthesis. That's synthesizing or making the sugar. Well, down here we have our high energy intermediates. Our carbon dioxide, and then that gets converted into low energy intermediates and our glucose. And this is the big payoff. This is ultimately what we want. All right, so now consider a mathematical equation. Oh, we're going to take our green and we're just going to write the word stroma, S-T-R-O-M-A. We're going to write that underneath the arrow. Again, that's another part of the chloroplast. Okay, so now think about math. In math, when you have one thing on one side of the equation and you have that same value on the other side of the equation, they can cancel each other out. All right, so on this side of the equation, way up here, pardon me, on this side of the equation, way up here, I've got these low energy intermediates. And now I also have these low energy intermediates on this side of the equation here. And then on this side of the equation here, I have these high energy intermediates. And then if I come back to this equal side of the equation over here, I have these high energy intermediates. So this, right, and this can get canceled out. And then this, right, and this gets canceled out. And what we're left with is our water, right, plus our carbon dioxide, pardon me here, right, plus our oxygen, or gives us our oxygen, and our glucose. The important thing is the glucose. The glucose is the payoff. This oxygen is just a waste product. Now, yes, plants use some of that oxygen for cellular respiration, but we'll get into that a little bit later, next chapter. So again, ultimately think of photosynthesis as an energy conversion process. We're going to take the energy from the sun and we're going to trap that in chemical bonds in the glucose. Now, but it's not directly in the glucose. It's just a two-step process. The energy from the sun gets captured in low energy intermediates. Those low energy intermediates become high energy intermediates. We then use the energy from those high energy intermediates to build the glucose from the carbon and the oxygen and the hydrogens from the water and the CO2. All right, so that's the photosynthesis in equation without the graphic organizer. Now what I want you to do is I want you to flip this over. So now go to the back side. Go to the back side, and I want you to take your pencil and we're going to draw a great big oval. Take your pencil and draw a great big oval. I'll show you what that looks like here. And then inside that, I want you to draw another one. So like, just give me 2 seconds to kind of Bob Ross in this, so I got to have my template in front of me. And it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm going to label this as we're going to label this the chloroplast. All right, so it's really that simple. Now the reason I'm drawing 2 layers is because, like a cell membrane, it is a phospholipid bilayer. So this is a phospholipid bilayer right here. Right? And then just like before, I'm going to title it Photosynthesis Overview. Photo in blue, synthesis in red, overview in black. Right? There's our photosynthesis overview. I'm also going to do this. I'm just going to draw a dashed line right down the middle of my chloroplast, because again, it's a 2-part equation. One part's going to happen here, the other part is going to happen here. So I'm going to split it up. All right, so on the left side, near the top, we're going to write part 1. There it is. On the left side near the top, we're going to write part 1. Then I'm going to take my blue pencil, and on the outside, I'm going to write 6H2O, and I'm going to draw an arrow going in like that. So there's the water going in. Then I'm going to take my green, and I'm going to draw something that looks like a squished snowman or a stack of green pancakes. And I'm going to label it the thylakoid. So So there it is. Right, remember on the back side when we wrote the word thylakoid underneath the arrow, this is just the location inside the chromosome. Right, so the chromosome has a bunch of it's the location inside the chloroplast, not the chromosome. So here, there's a bunch of these stacked pancake-like things called thylakoids, and this is where the light-dependent reaction takes place. All right, so now what's coming out? Again, we're going to take our blue, and what comes out is our O2, our 6O2, our 6O2. And then underneath that in the lower corner, I'm going to write the lower left corner, light-dependent reaction. So there it is. Get my hand out of the way. The light-dependent reaction. Sorry, hold this steady here for a second. The light-dependent reaction. So the water is going in, the oxygen's coming out. But remember, we also have these low-energy intermediates going in. So I also need to add the ADP and the NADP plus. Notice we're going to add those coming from this side. We're going to add those coming from this side here. So photosynthesis overview. So now it should look something like that. So there's the reactants, right? So here is reactant going in, reactants going in, right? Here is product coming out, and then now we need the high energy intermediates coming out, and that would be the ATP and the NADPH. There it is, NADPH and ATP. All right, so now, I'm going to take the green, and we're just going to draw a 3-arrow cycle. We're just going to draw this, and it's just called the Kelvin cycle. It's just called the Kelvin cycle. Now this over here is this is like a crazy set of complicated chemical reactions that we don't get into. That's for like college biology or AP biology. Just about done here. Just about done. Sticking with or putting on the green, and now take the red. So now we're up to our red. Now we've added our water. Well, now we need to add our CO2. So let's have the CO2 going in. Now we have our 6 CO2, 6 oxygen, 6 carbon dioxides going in. We have our 6 carbon dioxides going in. And then what's the last thing to come out? The glucose. C6H12O6. All right, C6H12O6. We can also put over here in green, write the word stroma. All right, so in the end, this is what it should look like. All right, so this whole big thing is called a chloroplast. Oh, we need to add one thing. We need to add, right, in red, in the lower right corner, light independent reaction. Now remember, we said that photosynthesis ultimately is an energy conversion process. It captures the energy in the form of the sun, and it traps that in chemical bonds in the form of sugar, glucose. But it doesn't do it directly. The plants don't capture the energy from the sun and convert it directly into glucose. There's this extra step, this extra intermediate step. So we go from the energy in the sun into those, and then we trap that energy, take low energy intermediates, we add that energy from the sun, we add chemical bonds to those low energy intermediates, making high energy intermediates and the waste product oxygen. And then we take the energy in those high energy intermediates, and we use that energy from those chemical bonds to make the glucose. So it's a two-part reaction. Capture the energy, that's the photo part, and then convert the energy from chemical form 1 into chemical form 2. So again, hold this up for the final product. If you need to pause it, you can certainly do so. But notice how we have water and carbon dioxide going in. We have the oxygen and the glucose coming out. And that matches our overall equation. Let's go back to this. Look at our overall equation, right? We have our water and carbon dioxide going in, and then we have our oxygen and glucose coming out. Oxygen and glucose coming out. So that's our overall equation. But of course we have here's our water, and then these low energy intermediates. We're going to take the sun from these low energy intermediates, add it to these chemicals by adding a phosphorus and a hydrogen. So these low energy intermediates become these high energy. They're higher energy because they have more bonds. Right? More bonds means more energy. So now we have ATP and NADP+. We now take the energy from these high energy intermediates, and then we use the carbon dioxide. This high energy carbon dioxide, high energy here, and the carbon dioxide creates these low energy intermediates, and then glucose. And that's the big payoff. If we turn it over, it's the same thing. Now it's just the graphic organizer of where it happens in the chloroplast. Where does it happen in the chloroplast? All right, so here is the thylakoid. We add the water, and we add the low energy intermediates. We get out the oxygen and these high energy intermediates. The high energy intermediates go into the Kelvin cycle, where we have the carbon dioxide come in, and what do we get out? We get out the low energy intermediates and the glucose. So these things just keep cycling around, right? These things just keep cycling around, right? The low energy, high energy, low energy, high energy, low energy, high energy. But we need that constant input of the water and the carbon dioxide, constant output of the oxygen and the glucose. And that is our photosynthesis overview. Whew. Well, it's a tidy 27 minutes. Thanks, students. Don't forget to follow up with your reading and the questions.